The National is over, and Ryan Johnson, CardCollector2 and I have a lot to say. I'm actually here at the National. The show literally is just ending right now. We're about to pack up the booth. But before we do, Ryan Johnson, CardCollector2, is about to come down and sit with me here, and we're going to talk about everything that went down at this year's National, what our thoughts about the show are, what went well, what didn't go well, and what the future of the National should hold. It's going to be a great conversation. We're going to break it all down, talk a little bit about the content both of us created this week, what it was like exhibiting here, and our observations from the show floor. So without further ado, please welcome CardCollector2 Ryan Johnson to the show. Ryan, we've made it to the end. This is it. We're here in the final hour. We're recording this in the final hour of the National on the show floor.
Yep.
Soon it will be time to break everything down. This is the last piece of content I'm doing here today. Wanted to sit down with you and recap this thing. Talk about what this was. Talk about what the future should be. How are you feeling, first of all?
Good. It definitely was an early morning. Hit me this morning. Brian and I were walking in here, filming, and I was like, man, this is really the first day I've been like, I want to sleep. This is really the first day it had hit me, but it's been a long week, but it's been a lot of fun. Like, the energy in this place has been crazy. It's from just nonstop. We got in Monday into the booth. Tuesday, dealers were setting up. Then Wednesday, VIPs and general admission, and it's just been nonstop every day since. So it's been a great show.
It's a long week, man. That's a long time to be here doing this.
Yep.
And it's not just for you and me.
Yep.
It's not just, being at the show and, dealing or exhibiting. It's also all the content.
Yeah.
And then also extending into the evenings. Like you sponsored the Thursday night trade night. That was, the CardCollector2 trade night.
Yep.
You were doing content there. You were doing content before the show even opens.
Yeah.
Like it's been a week of videos and all of that, in addition to doing card deals and doing trades and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot, man.
Yeah, it takes a lot, but we talk about it. I'm sure you have the same conversations. It's 7 days, and 7 days will come and go, and we'll be already planning for the next one and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
So it's just, when it's the Super Bowl of sports
It's Super
cards,
Bowl.
like you got to be on your A game, and that's
it.
That's what we do.
This is the week. There's no other week like it. And
100%.
from the standpoint of like traction around like YouTube videos and everything, like this is it.
Yep.
Like this is the week. Not only the number of people watching the videos,
But
also the amount of opportunity to create the videos, the number of storylines, the number of things you can do to create compelling content around the show
100%
doesn't exist in any other show.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is there are certain things that are time sensitive, right? There are certain things that you capture in the moment that are, this is time sensitive. We got to get this out now. Your interview with, Ruben or, live at trade night or some things that are just, you got to capture the moment now.
Yeah.
And then there's some things that are like, hey, I got to see this really cool collection. This is a great piece of content for 7 days from now or 14 days from now. Like we filmed with, Jake LaRavia, NBA basketball player. We filmed some content with him. Super nice guy. That doesn't need to drop tomorrow, right? So there's so much content opportunity in a place like this where it's great because some things are now, and then some things are, hey, this content will last months, and that's what's cool about this is there is a lot. So it's a lot of like, a lot less sleep, but a ton of potential for content.
Well, the nice thing for that, and I don't know if you do this, but this is what I'm doing. It allows you when you get back from the National to take a little bit of a break.
Sure.
We don't record any new content this next week because we've got everything recorded coming out of the National, and we can just roll with pre-recorded stuff. We'll pick back up, starting to record fresh stuff again like a week from now. But like we get a little bit of a break here now from content to just give the whole team the opportunity to recharge. Yeah,
it'll definitely be a, Brian and I will talk, I'm sure, on the way back, but it'll be a, we'll just edit the content we have now and recap the National, the daily vlogs of what we were buying and selling. potentially interviews from this. But yeah, nothing new for like you said, a week. Ours might last into the next week, but we'll have to kind of play it by ear. But yeah, this next week is typically like a complete reset. I mean, sounds like you've lost your voice. I'm not quite there yet, but just a complete reset and recharge, and then it's shifting into the next gear where Fanatics Fest is 2 weeks away.
Yeah, we don't get a rest for long. Fanatics Fest is right around the corner now, which is wild, the scheduling of that. Hopefully it won't be quite that close in future years for everybody, not just for content creation, but for the sake of dealers, for the sake of showgoers. It's hard. If you're traveling from California, it's hard to go to Cleveland and then go back to California and then turn around 3 weeks later and go to New York. That's a lot of travel, a lot of expense, all that kind of stuff for families.
100%, yeah. I think the big thing is expense for sure. To ask the everyday collector to come to Cleveland for the National, spend days here. There's a lot to see, a lot to do, and then to go back, and then 3 weeks later to spend more money to go to New York and see that, and that's going to be a spectacle in itself. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out with those being so close, especially for the first Fanatics Fest. It's definitely a quick turnaround, so I'm eager to see what that looks like.
So I want to talk about this year's National.
Yep.
Let's set the stage for a minute. You did something a little differently this year. This was the first year where you had more of a setup. Just tell the audience kind of what your perspective was in terms of how you approached this year's National.
Yeah, so we were in the Breakers Pavilion. So, unfortunately, we were not able to set up on the show floor. There just wasn't enough space available, and we didn't have a booth. So, a Breakers Pavilion spot was available for us to set up and display there. It's a little different from the show floor, as The biggest thing is you can't sell singles there. So it's more of a setup and display, our brand, who we are, and then just really to meet. I mean, that's the big thing is, we create a lot of content. We're trying to do some cool stuff, and it's a lot of people want to say hey and introduce themselves, and just a big networking opportunity. So the focus was on the experience at the booth. We rented a claw machine with our logo on it. That was a big hit. Partnered with our friends at Zion Cases and whatnot, and a bunch of places to put in cool prizes. So we gave away a case of Contenders football, all 32 spots. So we put those teams in the claw machine. So kids were winning the Colts or the Texans or the Titans in out of the claw machine, and then they got those cards from a break. And then we put in Zion Cases in there. So again, trying to create that experience there. Obviously did a little bit of buying where we were able to buy this week. So picked up some really, really cool stuff. Met some cool people and heard some cool stories. One of the first cards, I think it was on Friday, Brian could tell me it, gentleman came up. The very first card at the table on Friday was a gentleman who wanted to sell a Honus Wagner cut auto.
Oh, wow.
That's not normally my cup of tea.
Right.
Trying to find some comps on that. We agreed on a number, and he's like, he got emotional talking about it. He was like, this money is going to be used to take my daughters and myself on a trip. I'm getting later in life. They don't want to, they're not interested in these cards. I would sell this and spend the time with them. So it was really cool to see stuff like that. And I think that's what's fun about being in that area is you're not having to worry about selling cards and trading and doing all those things. It allowed us to we were still busy, but a lot more focused on meeting as many people as possible and just, again, from that networking perspective, how can we meet as many people as possible in a 7-day period?
Yeah. Well, that's super cool. Well, I'm glad you got the opportunity to be over there and be set up for sure. And that's a cool story when you meet those collectors that have those pieces and have the backstory to it. Those are always touching moments. How many cases and lanyards did you sign this week? I know you signed a lot because people were walking up to me and saying, hey, can you sign my lanyard? And there was always a CardCollector2 CC2 on it.
Yeah, it was a few for sure. It was definitely a few. I definitely have signed it. I think the thing I signed the most this week that had yours on it was hats. There's a lot of hats that had Geoff Wilson on the side and then me on the other side.
Yeah.
It was it's very cool, very humbling, right?
It is.
This is my 15th national in a row. My first one was in Cleveland in 2009, right? And I just think about the journey of what this has been like over those 15 years, and to think some young collector would ask for my signature is
Right.
seems crazy, but is a very humbling thing.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, and you've been a great role model to those young collectors.
Appreciate
a great
that.
role model, always known as like the guy who loves kids, has the kid trade nights, super kid friendly. I think that's an important thing. We've tried to keep our channel very kid friendly as well.
Sure.
You really keep your channel very kid friendly. I think that's really important because, as you saw this year, as we both seen,
Yep.
the number of kids coming to this seems to be exploding,
Sure.
right? There has to be a difference between you've been at many more of these than I have. My first one was 2019, so you have 10 more years of nationals than I do.
Yep.
I imagine that's a big difference from how things were 10, 15 years ago.
100%. I mean, I remember some of my early nationals, like it was like frowned upon to be a kid. Dealers didn't you just weren't treated the same way. It was, assuming kids don't have money, kids aren't interested in like this, they ask too many questions, their headaches, like those are some of the things I dealt with as a kid. Now, I was, probably a curious kid trying to figure out more and trying to learn the hobby, but yeah, kids are a big part of this hobby now, and they're everywhere. I mean, we're right in front of the kid area you guys have here is packed. I mean, there's got to be 40, 50 kids sitting right in front of us wheeling and dealing, and this is again, it has definitely evolved over the last 3, 4, 5 years. This is just the beginning. This is a big part of what the future of the National looks like and future of card shows look like. It's not just the National. Like that, I think, is an important thing we've talked about on our channel, is this experience, like catering to kids and making sure that there's a spot for them. This is a big part of the future of the hobby.
Yeah, I totally agree, 100%. It's been awesome to see the number of kids. So what are your impressions overall? Like as you think back to the 2024 National, good and bad, like what are your takeaways? What will you remember about this year's National?
It was packed. That's the thing is, this place, it sounds crazy. This is 500,000 continuous square feet. It's not big enough.
Yeah, it's not nearly big enough.
No, I mean, there's 20 to 30 minute lines for food, for the bathroom. And, I was in a meeting.
20 to 30 minute might be being generous.
Sure. And
I heard people that stood in line for food an hour and a half. So
I have not heard that. That is definitely crazy. But yeah, I mean, long lines. And it's like sporting event type lines. Like, you go to a baseball game, a football game, like you wait in line to get food, you wait in line to get the bathroom. It might be, it's busier here than it is there. It's just, again, like Cleveland was voted on, I think they said 3 years ago for it to be here. And I just don't think this venue was built for the demand the hobby now offers. I mean, especially from like a technology perspective, that, the hobby has evolved so much from a technology perspective. Like everything a lot of what we do is online. Like there's a lot of electronic payments, there's a lot of apps, and like we look up comps on there. So like, I don't think the Wi-Fi was rough. Like that's being generous.
So rough.
And it
couldn't get a damn signal all week
100%.
long. I'm trying, and you probably struggle with that a bit with recording your videos. I did. We were out on the show floor. I'm trying to do a deal on a card. I'm trying to load market movers and get a comp and the whole thing, and I can't get a damn signal.
Yep.
How am I supposed to negotiate like on a card if I don't even if I got no data? Like that was rough.
100%. And the National, like again, I was in a meeting this morning and they had talked about that. Like they tried, they did what they could to try to get it there, and it's just like it just didn't work, according to plan. But it was I think that was the biggest thing I took away, which is the number of people here was just insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like as time goes on, and every National just seems like, wow, that one was crazy. This got to be a record. Oh, that one was crazy. It's got to be a record. It just seems like every National is getting bigger and bigger. And I think the big thing for me with this show is like, I'm curious to see what the next iteration of the National looks like. Will we get, when are fan experiences coming where the MLB or the NFL is involved, and like we continue to develop this show out more and more, and because if you think about it, like how much customer experience is there where it's like a lot of hands-on stuff at the booths? And I think that's going to continue to develop with the show, is getting more leagues. They're a big part of the cards, like they're all over the cards. So I'm curious to see how this continues to develop. over time as this plays out. This is, again, I think sports cards are in their infancy days, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I mean, Michael Rubin shared that countless times that he wants to 10x it. I'm curious what the next iteration of this looks like from when you started in 2019 to what's 5 years from now look like.
I hope it grows in that direction. Clearly, Fanatics sees opportunity there with Fanatics Fest. They're definitely leaning into the direction of fan experiences, sports leagues, interactive exhibits, all that kind of stuff, much more than the National has. I mean, the National's really done none of that. Fanatics Fest is going to lean heavily in that direction. It'll be really interesting to see how that is, and maybe in the future there's some like kind of combo, like you said, kind of all of that. I think it could support it. One thing people I don't know that people who weren't here don't realize happened this year, just to show the extreme nature of how much bigger this could have been. There were 2 separate card shows that set up outside of the National because the National couldn't support enough dealers. There was one of group of ultra-modern dealers, like 100 tables that set up their own card show in the evenings.
The after show, right?
The after show. Yeah. And then there was also the soccer show, which was kind of dubbed as a trade night, but it really was a card show. I spent my last 2 nights there. It had probably 80 tables of soccer cards, probably 80 soccer dealers with, 3-6 showcases. It was 100% soccer cards. None of them could get into the National. There weren't many soccer cards at the National. They're all newer dealers because they're soccer. They couldn't get in the National. So they said, we're going to set up our own show. They were probably about 5 miles away. They rented out a big, it was like, it was a VFW or something. It was like basically a big open, meeting room type thing. And it was just rows and rows and rows of dealer tables for soccer cards. This place probably could have doubled in size, and I bet they could have filled it up with all the dealers who wanted to get in here but couldn't.
Yep.
And
I heard the after show got shut down.
It did because there were too many people going to it.
Yep.
I heard that too.
And we ran into this issue last year with Trade Night. There were 6,000 people in Trade Night last year in Chicago. It's the venue is massive. And there's still people waiting to get in. The problem is it's exploded so much in popularity. It's not big enough. It's not it's with trade nights, it's with the after show. It's look at the demand at those events. When you come to the National, especially a lot of the younger collectors, they don't want to sit in their hotel rooms from 6 to 10 p.m. They want to go trade cards. So where do they do? Okay, well, if Jeff Wilson posts, hey, we're going to go to this show. A lot of people show up. The after show had been promoted for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't go, but I saw the photos and I knew someone that set up, said it got shut down. Said it was so busy, the police were like, gotta go, can't do this. And that just speaks to how much demand there is for, again, these kids don't want to sit in their hotel room and just hang out and talk to themselves from 6 to 10 p.m. and go to bed. They want to trade.
It's an event. This is an experience.
100%.
This entire thing is an experience. It needs to be an experience. The National is finally leaning to that a little bit more. Like this year, you were the innovator of doing a trade night at the National. You were the guy who started that with your own money. What was that, 5-6 Nationals ago that you started that?
It was all, I want to be very clear, it was Jimmy's idea, and it was 8 years ago.
Okay.
It was in Atlantic City. We talked about it at the trade night. There was more pretzels than people the first time. It was a little food bar. 20 to 30 people showed up. Yeah, it was, Jimmy ended up paying for the entire first one. It was in a little ballroom. It was probably 500 square feet. And yeah, we just wheeled and dealed afterwards and said, hey, if you trade on Instagram, come meet the people you trade with. Come hang out. And it's blown up into, you guys live stream from there. Jake Laravia showed up. Michael Rubin, Mike Mahan, and the Fanatics team showed up. Josh Gordon was ripping packs there. Doc Gooden was on stage. It's now 3 nights, not 1 night. It's massive, and again, the space isn't big enough.
Right.
You need more, and that's where I go with I'm going to be very curious to see how Fanatics Fest plays out. That to me is going to be the big thing, is talking about these 2 shows a week after Fanatics Fest.
Yeah.
What does that look like? They're going to have talks and athletes and panels and the leagues, and is that what this consumer base wants? Or is it going to be nonstop wheeling and dealing over the course of 5 days? I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
It's going to be really interesting to watch for sure.
Yep.
I'm worried, Ryan, that we're going to go back to Chicago next year. Chicago's better suited for this than Cleveland.
For sure.
The Chicago Convention Center, better set up for it. Hotels right around it. Bigger area to do some of this stuff. Show floor is bigger.
Yep.
Better setup. But I worry Chicago's not even enough. I worry that we're going to feel some of the same things over the next 3 years in Chicago that we felt this year in Cleveland. I worry, what happens if 150,000 people show up to attend? You know, last year set the all-time record at I think like 110,000. This year, I don't know what the number is this year. Some people are saying this year beat last year's numbers. This year's busier than last year. This year set the all-time record. I haven't officially heard that.
Yep.
But based on the traffic, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
It's got to be right around that, if not bigger than last year. So we may have the all-time record. Maybe it's 115, 120,000 that came this year. I don't know. What happens if it's 150,000? What happens if it's 200,000 that try to come upon that show in Chicago 2 years from now, 3 years from now? It won't be able to handle it any better than Cleveland was able to handle this show.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Like, I think there will be some things that'll be improved, and naturally the Nationals done really good, some really good things that I don't know if people know about, like the corporate moving in earlier, right? That was on, I think they said Tuesday rather than Friday the week before, allows them to keep a lot of the venue doors closed, to keep the air, the temperature down so that it stays cool. Last year in Chicago it was 100 degrees. Corporate was right around the time dealer setup was. It was super hot throughout the show. The Wi-Fi thing, they have a whole entire year to prepare for the internet, knowing they're going to be there for 3 years. That seems like something you would expect them to figure out. The biggest thing is space. Again, I just don't anticipate there being less people at the National last year than this year. This is clearly growing. This is clearly something that we're going to see more and more people at. And is Chicago suited for that many people in that small of a square footage? Like in that close proximity. Like, again, you have 5 hotels connected. I mean, you can basically walk out of the National into a hotel room without walking outside much. I mean, it like you said, this spot is good for it, but is it good for the growth we're experiencing at such a quick rate?
Yeah, I know it's wild to think about. It will definitely be better than it was this year, but I feel like we got to think further out. It's hard. It's been a challenge for the National because they didn't, whenever they anticipated that, whenever they signed this contract 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was, I'm sure they never anticipated that the 2024 National was going to be this way.
Sure.
Well, I'm now pleading to the people who run the National, please anticipate that next time you have to sign a contract for 2028, please anticipate that it's going to be triple what it was this year. Let's go somewhere that can handle 1 million square feet. Let's go somewhere that can handle 250,000 people. Let's not assume that it's just going to be the same and then be caught off guard and be perpetually behind with the ability to serve the people who show up to the venue.
Yeah, 100%. I think it would be in everybody's best interest if we had room to grow rather than, the space we have now where we're bursting out of the seams. We're waiting 45 minutes for a hot dog. It's 30 minutes to go to the bathroom, right? Like, I don't blame the National for that. These decisions are made well in advance, right? But this should be a sign that 3, 4, 5 years from now, these venues we're in don't work. Don't work. So if we want to continue to grow this and make this the Super Bowl of sports cards and continue to evolve the space, like all of the companies that set up here are doing, this show has to do that the same way. We have to hold them, we have to ask them to do the same thing. And in doing so, we need way more space. It's better to have room. I would say it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And we're in the need it, not have it space right now.
I want to see you be able to set the Guinness Book of World Records for the all-time biggest trade night. Let's get a venue big enough to get like 20,000, 30,000 people into Ryan's trade night here at the National. 6,000 people last year in Chicago. I don't know how many people do you think were across the 3 days this year? A ton.
Yeah, I mean,
nuts.
Quite a few. Well into 5 figures.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And so let's just keep that record breaking because the thirst is there. The thirst is there. That's the exciting thing about all of this. And I still think like we're going to look back at what this will become
Yep.
5-10 years from now, and we're going to look back at the 2024 National like this was small and tiny and archaic compared to how this thing's evolved. Just like how today you look back at the 2014 National and you're like, oh man, that was funny back then. It was so tiny. They did this little trade night and 50 people showed up. And now I think 10 years from now, we're going to be like, remember Cleveland's, when there was only 120,000 people. And I mean, I think we're going to look at that, and I think that's truly the way things are going. So knock on wood, hopefully it all continues. But I think we got a good ride ahead of us.
Yeah, I would agree.
Awesome. All right, Ryan. Well, we're at the end of the show. I know you got some packing up to do. We got to get this booth packed up. I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to go do that as well. But this was a really fun conversation. Glad to get it caught up with you, and I'm glad the National went really well for you.
Absolutely. Likewise, I always appreciate you having me. It's always a blast. So thank you for having me.
There you go. Ryan Johnson, Card Collector 2. Of course, I'm sure you guys all already follow him everywhere, but if not, please follow Card Collector 2 everywhere. And also, please make sure you're following the Geoff Wilson Show on YouTube, the YouTube channel, but also on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, because we post these shows absolutely everywhere. We appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.